Harris County Judge Lina Hidalgo on Sunday warned that Republican state legislators had made a shameless power grab by passing a pair of bills aimed at allowing the state government to take control of elections in the Democratic stronghold, which includes Houston. Senate Bill 1933 passed on Sunday as the state's legislative session came to a close, with lawmakers sending the GOP Governor Greg Abbott's desk a bill that could give Secretary of State Jane Nelson, who was nominated by the governor and confirmed by the state Senate, the authority to run elections under circumstances in any county with more than 3 million residents. The legislation was passed 2 days after Senate Bill 1750, which also applies to counties above that population threshold and would abolish the nonpartisan county elections administrator position. Harris County, which President Joe Biden won by 13 points in 2020, is the only county in Texas with a population above 3 million, making both bills apply only to its elections. These bills are not about election reform, Hidalgo said at a press conference last week as the legislation was advancing. They are not about improving voters' experience. They are entirely about suppressing voters' voices. The reasoning behind these bills is nothing but a cynical charade. Hidalgo and other officials said at that event that they plan to file a lawsuit against Abbott's administration if the governor signed the bills into law. The Texas Constitution bars state lawmakers from passing laws that apply only to specific jurisdictions, but Republicans' use of a population threshold instead of naming Harris County itself in the legislation may be used as their defense in the lawsuit if the lawsuit moves forward. SB 1750 requires Harris County to change how its elections are overseen, starting September 1st, when Houston will be 2 months away from voting for its next mayor. Harris County Clerk Tanisha Hudspeth, a county assessor, and Harris Bennett will oversee elections in the county starting in September. Biden avoids debt ceiling for Fed, Washington Associated Press. Veering away from a default crisis, the House approved a debt ceiling and budget cuts package late Wednesday, as President Joe Biden and Speaker Kevin McCarthy assembled a bipartisan coalition of centrist Democrats and Republicans against fierce conservative blowback and progressive dissent. The hard-fought deal pleased few, but lawmakers assess it was better than the alternative, a devastating economic upheaval if Congress failed to act. Tensions ran high throughout the day as hard-right Republicans refused to deal, while Democrats said extremist GOP views were risking a debt default as soon as next week. With an overwhelming House vote, 314 to 117, the bill now heads to the Senate with passage expected by week's end. McCarthy insisted his party was working to give America hope as he launched into a late evening speech extolling the bill's budget cuts, which he said were needed to curb Washington's runaway spending. Amid deep discontent from Republicans who said the spending restrictions did not go far enough, McCarthy said it is only a first step. The package makes some inroads in cutting the nation's debt as Republicans demand without rolling back Trump-era tax breaks as Biden wanted. To pass it, Biden and McCarthy counted on support from the political center, a rarity in divided Washington. In a statement released after the vote, Biden said, "I have been clear that the only path forward is a bipartisan compromise that can be the support of both parties. This agreement meets that test," unquote. That's what he said. He called the vote good news for the American people and the American economy. Biden had sent top White House officials to the Capitol and called lawmakers directly to shore up backing. McCarthy worked to sell skeptical fellow Republicans, even fending off challenges to his leadership in the rush to avert a potentially disastrous U.S. default. Swift passage later in the week by the Senate would ensure government checks will continue to go out to Social Security recipients, veterans, and others, and would prevent financial upheaval at home and abroad. Next Monday is when the Treasury has said the U.S. would run short of money to pay its debts. Another headline, children labor in the U.S., children underage under attack. Child labor laws are under attack in states across the country. Amid increasing child labor violations, lawmakers must act to strengthen standards. Report by Jennifer Scherer and Nina Mast in the previous month. What this report finds, states across the country are attempting to weaken child labor protections just as violations of these standards are rising. This report identifies bills weakening child labor standards in 10 states that have been introduced or passed in the past 2 years alone. It provides background on child labor standards and the coordinated push to weaken them, discusses the context in which these laws are being changed, and explains the connection between child labor and the United States' broken immigration system. It also provides data showing that declines in labor force participation among young adults reflect decisions to obtain more education in order to increase their long-term employability and earnings, and that nearly all youth currently seeking work report being able to find it. Why it matters, federal laws providing minimum protections for child labor were enacted nearly a century ago. These leading many to assume that children working in grueling and dangerous jobs was a thing of the past. In fact, violations of child labor laws are on the rise, as are attempts by state lawmakers to weaken the standards that protect children in the workplace. What lawmakers can do about it? And I say, this report provides policy recommendations for lawmakers at both the federal and state levels. At the federal level, Congress should heed calls to increase penalties for child labor violations and address chronic underfunding of agencies that enforce labor standards. Eliminate occupational carve-outs that allow for weaker standards in agricultural employment. Pass the Protecting the Right to Organize PRO Acts and implement immigration reforms that curb the exploitation of unauthorized immigrants and unaccompanied migrant youth. At the state level, lawmakers should eliminate sub-minimum wages for youth and raise the minimum wage, eliminate the two-tiered system that fails to protect children from hazardous or excessive work in agriculture, strengthen labor standards enforcement, and empower young people to build and strengthen unions. At a time when serious child labor violations are on the rise in hazardous meat packing and manufacturing jobs, several state legislators are weakening or threatening to weaken child labor protections. Hi, and welcome back to the show. I have my guest, Frank Duhart.
Yes.
We'll be talking about current events, and as you saw me already speaking on the introduction of today's headlines.
Yeah.
Did you hear what I read about the Texas legislature passing a law appointing people that if somebody wins and they feel like they don't want them, they remove them from office. Let's say you're a senator, a county executive or something, you know, mayor.
Right.
And we don't like you. I would say, well, maybe he's too liberal or we don't like him. They can remove you from your seat?
Wow, that's amazing. And you know, they did something like that with Hillary Clinton. 'Cause
When?
She actually got more votes. Than,
Oh, well, that's the electoral college, which I'm against. We need to...
So now they're doing it in certain states.
Oh,
now
I see
too.
your point. I see your point.
That's right.
So, but that's illegal.
Yep, that's right.
And then when I was reading about the governor appointed that lady, so she's the one who's going to be appointing Janet or Jane. Yeah, it was on my teleprompter.
Yeah, they did a lot of different
Janet
things
Nelson.
down there. Yeah, in Texas too with the...
Texas had the most horrible laws.
Yeah, they did the things with the abortion laws and trying to stop women from being able to choose whether to get abortions or not. So there's a lot of different laws down there where...
Oh, I'm sorry for the activists over there because I think they have a full plate, doing their activism. And then you read, of course you read, because every day on the news was the debt ceiling.
Yes.
Biden avoids debt ceiling for feet. What do you think about it?
Well, I think Biden, you know, tried to do a good job as far as where America was going and the debt that we are in, just because of the simple fact that even before the pandemic, there was a lot of going on with the debt problems.
Oh, definitely. He spent money on infrastructure. And that's what I told you. I told one time that Republicans call working money spent on infrastructure, roads, creating jobs, jobs in counties, you name it. All these jobs that help and bring jobs to the regular people. Republicans call them spending.
Yep, that's right. A lot
Programs,
of things
jobs, so people can spend and they pay taxes. The economy gets healthy. And you can see every time the Democrats are in power, they leave a good, decent, healthy economy. When Republicans come to power, they leave the country in shambles. George Bush, remember?
That's right.
To Bill Clinton.
Right.
Obama to Donald Trump. Now Donald Trump.
Well, Ronald Reagan did okay when he was in, but you know, that was a different era.
You know that I have to do an investigation on, because I'm going to talk about what the GOP did on the spending.
Yeah.
I've heard that Ronald Reagan was to pass the law that the people with mental illnesses on the streets, it was because of him. I don't know much about it. I know people are blaming him, but I don't know to what extent, what he did. Because
he did
freedom,
a lot of different things as far as what you would consider negative actions
toward
for
the working
American
class.
system. But he did a lot of positive things.